What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Eric Wilson. And today we want to talk about Filip Chytil, the one and only Filip Chytil. Where is he going to play this season? Of course, the center position, but the second line or the third line? He's been trapped and buried on the third line for the last couple of years, playing with the kids, but the other kids seem like they're moving up. Is Filip Chytil moving up with them? Kaapo Kakko could be all the way up on the first line this season. Lafreniere expected to move up to the second line. You got 2/3 of the kid line in the top six. What happens to Filip Chytil? Is it possible that he moves up to the second line, becomes the 2C, and pushes Trocheck down to the third line? Maybe, but maybe not. Today, we're going to go ahead and discuss that possibility right here on Fireside Rangers. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Fireside Rangers. And without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on Filip Chytil potentially becoming the 2C?
I'm doing good. That's a very enthusiastic intro. I very much enjoyed it.
Lots of caffeine today.
I think you're absolutely right. Kaapo Kakko, he's going to be on the first line. I'm just going to say that right now. Lafreniere, I don't know. I feel like Blake Wheeler is going to take that second line spot. So Lafreniere still might be a little buried. Talked a little bit about that last episode. Make sure you guys go back and check that one out. But when it comes to Filip Chytil, I think there's a good chance we see him up on the second line. Out of all the kids, he is the oldest. He's the most developed, and just even like stats wise, he's put up the most points last season. He had hit 45 points, and I think if he were to be playing up on the second line, that number would only improve. The only thing that I really just have about it is, we just recently signed Vincent Trocheck. He's making big money, and he also puts up big points. So it's like, do we want to put him buried down in the bottom six as well? That's the debate. I don't know.
That is the debate. So here's the thing with Filip Chytil. I think that he's a player who has really struggled to break out. I think that when you look at the way Kaapo Kakko started to break out last season, there's a pretty big difference between his step forward versus Lafreniere and versus Chytil. I think that Chytil probably a little bit more developed compared to Lafreniere. Lafreniere is the really inconsistent one, as we discussed in that last episode. As Eric said, go check that out. But Chytil, last season, 74 games played, 45 total points, a good split between the goals and assists, 22 goals, 23 assists, a well-rounded player. But compare that to Vincent Trocheck playing on the second line, 82 games played, 22 goals, 42 assists, 64 total points. Now, there's a lot of production coming from Trocheck, but you could argue that's because he's playing on the second line compared to Chytil on the third line. So, Eric, if he were to move up to the second line, do you think he could realistically increase his production that much to justify the move? Do you think that Filip Chytil could become a 60-plus point player if he were to move up to the second line?
Yeah, 100%. And it's really just for two reasons. One, if you're in the top six, you're going to get more playing time. The more time you're on the ice, the more time you're going to have to score points. So that alone is going to get him points. And then you just look at the players surrounding him. It's like, yeah, sure, Trocheck hit 64 points, but at the same time, he also played a full season. He played 8 more games than Filip Chytil, and he was playing alongside Artemi Panarin, who is like a 90-point scorer, best passer in the league, and whoever he's playing with, he's gonna help them increase as well. So that alone, just to have Chytil playing next to Artemi Panarin and then potentially Blake Wheeler, I think that's alone going to boost his stats as well, compared to on the third line when the kid lines together, where he was playing alongside Kakko, who's just really starting to just break out now, and Lafreniere, who is, it's Lafreniere. So I think no matter who is playing on that second line, they're definitely just going to have more points compared to the third line, just for ice time and surrounding players.
I agree with you there. It will be interesting to see what kind of a difference being up on those top lines versus those bottom lines makes in this new system. Of course, new head coach, Peter Laviolette. Peter Laviolette has indicated that he really wants to give these younger guys more of a chance and move them up. So I think that's a benefit for Filip Chytil, as he probably seeks more ice time. Peter Laviolette has said that he wants to give the kids more ice time. So there is a chance that Laviolette steps in here and specifically just tries to develop these younger guys over these older guys and moves him up into the top six for that reason alone. But we all know head coach has to make the decision that will win the team the most games. So Vincent Trocheck's still a really good player, really dynamic player, could go both ways. I do think that cutting back his ice time could be detrimental. So I want to hear your take on that, Eric. Do you think, when you look at Vincent Trocheck, obviously they signed him to that big, long contract just last offseason. A really good first season with the Rangers, in my opinion. Started out a little bit slow, but really picked things up, especially during the midway point. Again, like I mentioned, finished with 64 total points on the second line. I like Trocheck a lot. Would you be concerned by him losing some time on ice? Do you think that would have a really bad effect on the team's performance?
It would definitely have an effect. I don't know how detrimental it would be because we're not saying that putting Trocheck down on the third line and replacing him with Chytil is like a bad thing. Like either option is going to be a good option. It really just depends on just like the type of player. Where Trocheck, he puts up a decent amount of points, but I think where he shines the most, and there's a very underrated stat, is his faceoffs. Throughout the last couple of seasons, especially last season, the Rangers are just really, really terrible at faceoffs. And I'm pretty sure last season, Vincent Trocheck was the only center on the team whose faceoff percentage was like a positive, like over 50%, where he's winning more than he loses. And, faceoffs lead to puck possession, which leads to goals and stuff. So just to have Trocheck playing less means we're not going to have the puck as much. But then you also consider just looking at overall lines. We have the main 5v5 lines, first, second, third, and fourth. But then Trocheck is also on the power play. He centers the second power play because, Zibanejad's not going to be on the second power play unit there. So even if Trocheck were to be down on the third line, he's still going to get a lot of ice time. And I think it wouldn't hurt, to have him down the third line. I think he'd still produce and contribute in some ways as well.
Yeah, I think so as well. But I just think that Trocheck is really talented, and I don't want to say that his talent would be wasted down on the third line, but maybe it would be. Maybe that's not enough time on ice for him because again, they're paying him a lot, and he is a good veteran player. But I also see the argument you got to start developing Filip Chytil a little bit more than he's already being developed. One thing that he said recently, here's a quote from Filip Chytil. I know the production wasn't there that much the first years, but this year, finally, it's coming along with my game. It's about the process and about the hard work that I'm putting in. I'm happy that I could see that hard work pays off and it's not finished. It's just a start for me. So you like to hear that. Filip Chytil, hungry, ready to score more points, or at least put more points up, score more goals. That's kind of an exciting quote for me. Eric, what are your thoughts on that one?
I mean, I love that quote. I like that he's producing points. He's aware that he's producing points, and he just wants to keep improving and stuff. We've said it before, and I think most Rangers fans know the Rangers are really, really bad at developing prospects. Most of our talent throughout Rangers history has been acquired through trades or just signing free agents, from building within the organization with prospects. We really haven't been that good. So to see a guy like Filip Chytil, who the Rangers drafted in the first round a couple of years ago, actually go through the steps of playing in the minors and then getting called up and breaking out and now producing points and potentially moving into a top 6 role. It's not very often that we see this. So no, it's a good feeling to have someone like that. And hopefully it'll happen again with Brennan Othman in a couple of years, but I'm, fingers crossed.
Well, everyone who views this channel knows that we're really high on Brennan Othman, but let's transition over and talk about these lines, right, Eric? Because you put them in the chat here. So projected lines, first line, Kreider's Zibanejad, Kakko. That one we think is a given. But what happens on lines 2 and 3? Panarin, blank Wheeler, Lafreniere, blank VC. Now that's obviously interchangeable, Filip Chytil or Vincent Trocheck. So if you had to put your ideal lines together here, where is Trocheck and where is Chytil? Are you in the camp of move Chytil up, get him up in the second line as soon as possible? Or do you think maybe that's something that gets worked into throughout the season? Maybe they kind of rotate between the second and third line. What are your ideal lines? How do they take shape this season?
See, I see the positives in both. It's not even just there's positives and negatives to both. There's just positives in both. So I would say at this point, if Lafreniere is going to be stuck down on the third line, I think I would put Trocheck down on the third line with him because it's time for Chytil to break out. He's putting up 45 points in 74 games on the third line. Having him on the second line with Panarin, I think, is just going to boost those stats immensely. And then you look at the fact that Lafreniere is struggling to break out. He's ready to start putting up points as well. Having a fully established veteran center next to him might improve that as well. So I just think overall, for the betterment of the team and individual players, Chytil on the second line, Trocheck on the third line, at least to start off and see how it goes from there.
Yeah, personally, opposite. I think you start off with Trocheck. You know what you have there. You got to get off to a good start during the season, and then you see how things go, and you maybe try and rotate it, and you move Heedle up a little while later. I get how important it is to develop Heedle for the long term of this team, but you do have to keep in mind Trocheck is also a long-term solution for this team because he is under contract through, let me double check here. I want to say, 2029. He's here for a while. That is a long time. And yes, Filip Chytil did sign that extension. He's here on this contract through 27, but those two are the future of the center line, and you still have Chris Kreider here on contract through 27 as well. So those are your three centers, unless one gets traded and shipped off. But Trocheck likely to stay. Tough to trade a player who's under contract for that long. Kreider, I think he's going to stay. He's, superstar. He's a Rangers legend, honestly. And then Chytil, I mean, we want to make him the future. So I don't think that he gets shipped off either unless he decides to move positions. So here's one other alternative that I'll throw out there for you, Eric, before we wrap. And we've talked a lot about the right wing position needing to be upgraded, right? And, it's listed here on Cap Friendly and it's listed elsewhere. And we've seen it before. Trocheck has played on the right wing before. Could you see a possibility where we get into the season and that second line shapes out to be Panarin, Chytil, Trocheck on the right wing?
I think that would just entirely depend on who else we could acquire. Because let's say first line's Kreider, Zibanejad, Kakko. Then you have Panarin, Chytil, Trocheck. Wheeler would go down onto the third line there with Lafreniere. But then who's going to play center there? You could say that Gaudreau would move up and play third line center, but then that leaves an open spot on the fourth line. Brendan Othman or someone we acquire at the trade deadline or something. I don't know. I think it's a possibility, if they could work together in the top six. I think that immediately just puts the Rangers back into having one of the best top sixes in the entire NHL, like we did when Tarasenko and Kane were here very, very, very briefly. But then it just leaves another opening down there on like the third or fourth line, which, we signed a lot of veteran forwards this free agency. And, they're good. A lot of them have some experience and talent that they can bring to the table, but you really just don't want to fill your entire bottom six with all these like old, slow players because that's just going to bring us down. It's good to have a couple down there like Bonino and Pitlick, but other than that, we need someone young, fast, who's ready to improve and try to fight to get into the top six. So I could see it happening. It's just as long as there's a plan to fill a bottom six spot.
Yeah, I think it could be a really good option. I mean, you're getting that much talent on the same line. You're getting it all in the top six. It makes a lot of sense. But like you said, what happens in the bottom six? And I think one thing that we all know, depth can be everything for a team. So I think there's an argument to make that you kind of want Chytil on the third line. You want him down there to be kind of your star. He can really shine bright. And you have a lot of depth down there in the bottom six. That is super important. I mean, you can make the same argument for Trocheck as well. This is a good problem for the Rangers to have, not knowing who's playing on which lines because they're both really talented. That's a good problem, and I'm excited about that. One thing that I will say, Trocheck, 30 years old, Chytil, 23 years old. If Chytil does move up to that second line, we could see a massive breakout season. Like, that is possible. There is potential for that to happen. Young guy, finally hitting his stride, had a really great season, 45 points last year. He can move up into that second line. Who knows how many points he can put up on the board? It could be a pretty big number. And Trocheck can just continue to be his consistent, fine self. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. Of course, training camp right around the corner. We'll see these teams practice, see what lines they start to work with. And then, of course, it's going to be really exciting once we get to the regular season, reacting to the official lines and to all the other news surrounding the New York Rangers right here on Fireside Rangers. So make sure to like this video if you did enjoy. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Fireside Rangers. And, of course, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.